Senators grilling Supreme Court nominee Neil Gorsuch today. How did he do? What did he say? And is it possible for Democrats to block him? Then, the president and the Senate Majority Leader have resorted to threats to get Republicans to vote for health care. Is that a sign that they're scrambling? Then, after getting fired by the White House, star of federal prosecutor Preet Bharara, he has landed a new gig. We're going to take what it is and what it could lead to next. Good evening, everybody, and welcome to RFL. I'm Richard French. Thank you so much for joining us this Tuesday evening. And we start tonight on Capitol Hill with a confirmation hearing for Supreme Court nominee Neil Gorsuch. Now, it's been a long day for Gorsuch in front of the Senate Judiciary Committee. Supreme Court nominee Judge Neil Gorsuch getting peppered with questions during his confirmation hearing.
Let me ask you about Citizens United.
Does the president have the right to authorize torture?
Does a good judge decide who should win?
Republicans, they champion the president's decision.
Quite frankly, I was worried about who he'd pick. Maybe somebody on TV. But President Trump could not have done better in choosing you.
A strict interpreter of the Constitution with a track record of right of center rulings. The Democrats, they're grilling Gorsuch about President Trump's more conservative campaign promises.
The president said that he would appoint someone who would overturn Roe.
The judge skirting around the answer.
It has been reaffirmed many times. I can say that, yes.
And saying he can't give an opinion on current cases.
Is a blanket religious test, is that consistent with the First Amendment?
Senator, that's an issue that's currently being litigated actively.
Also having to answer to the past. Democrats still upset Republicans would not even give President Obama's nominee, Merrick Garland, a hearing.
Do you think he was treated fairly by this committee, yes or no?
Senators, I explained to you before, I can't get involved in politics.
But when asked if he would hold the president accountable, his answer is clear.
No man is above the law.
And our senior political correspondent, Andrew Whitman, he joins us now with more on Gorsuch.
Well, Rich, earlier today I spoke with Drexel University Law School professor David Cohen about Gorsuch and how Democrats are approaching his hearing. His newest piece in Rolling Stone says these confirmation hearings will be a test for Democrats. And Cohen asks whether they'll stand up to Gorsuch or let President Trump, quote, radicalize the court for decades. David, the main argument against Gorsuch is that it's a stolen Supreme Court seat, stolen from Merrick Garland. Is it your sense that Democrats are sticking with this argument or beginning to try and judge Gorsuch on the merits, and should they just stick to the stolen seat argument?
I think there are really two arguments against Gorsuch. One, like you said, that this is a stolen Supreme Court seat. President Obama was supposed to nominate someone to replace Antonin Scalia last year, and the Republicans completely blocked that. And now here we are a year later with the Republicans trying to fill that space. And the Democrats are bringing this up during the nomination hearings today and yesterday. We'll see if they block him as a result of that, but they're bringing up that he's out with a lot of Americans and how they think of the law. He's going to be one of the most conservative Supreme Court justices that we've ever seen if people who analyze him are correct. And I think that's a big issue the Democrats are focusing on as well.
But David, if Democrats try to attack Garland on the merits, doesn't that run the risk of making him seem even more qualified or more legitimate? Gorsuch, I'm sorry.
Yeah, and so that's one of the issues. It's Neil Gorsuch. It should be Merrick Garland, but it's Neil Gorsuch. And I think that Democrats can say something very clearly. He's a very well-qualified and smart individual. He's just out of step with the way Americans think about the law and society. And I think they can hold both views. It's hard to attack him on his credentials. No one's going to say he's unqualified. It's just that he's a very conservative, far-right extremist who shouldn't be on the court.
One of the Democrats' focuses has been to paint Gorsuch as being too close to business. But if you go back to the election, we have the Republicans in the White House and in both branches of Congress. It seems that voters were willing to sacrifice a little bit in order to try to promote business in the country. Is that a dangerous argument against him?
And I don't think that's the strongest argument against him. I think it's certainly true. But I think there is a sense that during the election, President Trump was campaigning on the idea of expanding jobs. And if he's pro-business, he's going to be against the worker. So I think there is something to that. To me, it's not the strongest argument, but there is something to that.
David, nobody really expects any solid answers from Gorsuch about sensitive issues that could come before the court, like abortion or immigration or the travel ban or even Russia, since it's expected he would deflect away from any case he might have to rule on if he's confirmed. But you've written about ways that you think Democrats can get past that, correct?
Yeah, I think that they should ask him about his judicial philosophy. He calls himself originalist, someone who thinks that the Constitution should be interpreted the way it was understood at the time it was written. And they should ask him about that. They should ask him what that means in certain cases that have already been decided. They can ask him if he agrees with those cases, if his philosophy would lead him down the same path. That's not raising issues that are going to come before the court again, but it'll help us understand how he thinks about the law and maybe what that will mean in the future.
You know, you mentioned that originalist position that Gorsuch and Scalia before him took. I'm just curious. I failed to come up with a sensible answer as to how to read the Constitution that was written in 1789 to answer modern questions like abortion or surveillance or online security or transgender rights. I'm wondering if you have any arguments that I've overlooked over the years.
I mean, the position that originalists take is that on those kinds of things, the things that you're talking about that the framers could have never imagined, that means that we should leave it to the legislative process and that the Constitution just says nothing about those things, which means the legislators can figure it out themselves. Others take the view that our Constitution instills values that are constant, but that it changes over time how those values play out. And so if we value equality or autonomy, those means different things in 2017 than they may have meant in, say, 1865.
We know how Republicans have and will act, singing Gorsuch's praises, pointing decisions that they like. I'm curious, what are you watching for from Democrats in all of this, short of actually being able to block Gorsuch's appointment to the Supreme Court? What would you like to see from Democrats?
I'd like to see them force him to answer questions about his judicial philosophy and not let him get away with just saying, oh, that's going to be decided in the future, so I don't say anything. I'd like to see them vote consistently against him at the hearing, because before it gets to the full vote in the Senate, there will be a vote Thursday or Friday from the committee members, and I'd like to see all of the Democrats on the committee vote against him, and then set up a fight in the actual Senate when they vote on him in a couple weeks over this nomination.
If you could pin Gorsuch down yourself and get him to open up about one particular issue or one case in detail, what would that issue be and why?
I would ask him about his views on originalism and race, because there are some really unpalatable answers about originalism and race that if he really does believe in originalism, he would have to give. For instance, if he believes in originalism, he would have to say that states can ban interracial marriage. Now, it's been long precedent from the Supreme Court that that's unconstitutional, but if he really is an originalist, he would have to say states can ban interracial marriage. If he's not an originalist and he doesn't believe that, then he needs to say it. He needs to say he picks and chooses his answers based on what he thinks are best instead of hiding behind this veil of originalism.
Final question. With so many comparisons between Gorsuch and Scalia, a lot of people are thinking, well, the court won't be that much different with Gorsuch on it than we've had for the last, decade or so. What's your impression of a Supreme Court with Neil Gorsuch as a member?
I think you're right that he's not going to be much different than Justice Scalia, although some say he'll be even more conservative than Justice Scalia. What he will be is much younger than Justice Scalia, and he'll be on the bench for another 30, 40, possibly more years. I mean, he's a young, healthy 49-year-old, so he could be on the bench into the 2060s, 2070s even, and that makes a huge difference to have someone with this extreme view of the Constitution on the Supreme Court for so long.
David Cohen, professor of law at the Klein School of Law at Drexel University, also a contributor to Rolling Stone, Slate, and many others. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right, coming up next, we'll bring our panel in here to take a look at the political side of the Gorsuch nomination. Democrats still angry that President Obama's nominee didn't get a chance last year, but do they have really a chance at the end of the day to derail this president's pick?